Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore and welcome to the MuseScore Café. So this is my weekly series where we talk about some aspect of making music using MuseScore. And today we're going to be doing my monthly feature that I do third Wednesday of the month, where we look at one particular score and the issues involved in entering that particular score. So the score that I'm going to be using is a choral score that I created as a demonstration for my course. And so some of you have had a chance to look at it, try your hand at it, and maybe we'll have some questions that come up as a result. But I'm going to kind of pop around and look at different aspects of it because it covers a whole lot of different aspects of choral music. And so before we're done, we'll have hopefully been able to look at a lot of different features. So let me just make sure I have my chat up on my other system here. So hopefully, this is always an adventure for me, learning all the technologies involved here. And last time I had sound problems, I purchased what hopefully is a solution to that allows me to wire things up differently. It's constantly a work in progress, but definitely be letting me know if anyone is experiencing technical issues that aren't just your own poor internet connections, but are like my voice sounding chipmunky or the playback sounding all stuttery or anything. But hopefully what I'm doing now will be working. So let's go ahead and take a look at the score we're going to be actually dealing with. So I have it already entered into MuseScore, of course, because I wanted to be able to have it there available, and then I have a PDF that we're going to be working from. So what I'm going to do here is first just play through the score. It's brief, so you get an idea of what we're dealing with here. So I'm going to play through the score, and you can see if things come up that you look at and go, wow, how did you do that? Or how would I do this, etc. So let's go ahead and just play through this thing. All right, there you go. And apparently I have turned off the playback of repeats, which is why we didn't hear that DC go back to the beginning, so we didn't hear the first 8 bars again. But trust me, that is what happens. Scott, I answered your question in the community chat there, so go ahead and I explained the different ways. Basically, you can paste onto a note, you can paste into a frame, or you can right-click a frame, and you'll see Add, and there's image, and that'll allow you to load an image. So that's the quick answer there. Let me go ahead and just show you, since I do have playback of repeats turned off, if I go to the gear icon on the toolbar, that is where I had it turned off. So if I now replay it from that second to last measure, it does the DC. So there you go. So this is the piece. And I created it because I wanted to show a number of different things. So I'm sure there will be some questions that come up here. But let me talk you through, is there going to be a camera again? Marla, can you explain? Oh, are you talking about the thing, the camera icon that used to be in MuseScore to allow you to do what your operating system does already, which is like make a screenshot? So that tool is temporarily gone. It hasn't been redesigned for the new interface, but meanwhile, you can use your operating system screenshot tool, right? On all operating systems have their own built-in screenshot tool. So for now, you can rely on that while we wait for a new screenshot tool to be developed. So like on Windows, it's the Windows key plus Shift plus S. Someone else could maybe say what it is on Mac, but I think it involves the number 4, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so yeah, let's focus on this score here and the issues that come up. So the beginning of the score is what we would call a chorale style, right, where everyone has essentially the same rhythm. So we just have one set of lyrics, and I have two verses. This is Command Shift 4. Thanks, Victor. So we just have one set of lyrics that applies to all the parts. The second section of this piece is more contrapuntal, and so by that I mean there's like everyone has their own rhythm, and so we have different sets of lyrics, right? These lyrics here are applying to this alto part. These lyrics here are applying to the tenor part. These lyrics here are applying to the bass part. These lyrics here applying to the soprano part, etc. So that I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing what you're seeing here. If you have music that's highly contrapuntal like this is going to get hard to read. You're normally going to be better off splitting into four staves for something like that, which is its own thing. But if it's just one brief passage like this little 6-bar segment, yeah, it's okay to do this. So I'll be showing you how to do that along the way here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and let's go through the process of creating a score and setting this thing up. So what I'm going to do is I've got a PDF of it here, and I'm going to pin that so that it's going to remain visible so I can kind of see what's happening, and you can see what's happening as I create my new score. So I'm going to hit Control N to create, whoops, I was in Chrome, I guess, when I hit Control N. So I'm in MuseScore now, hit Control N, and gee, it didn't show the keystroke. Oh, I know why. It's because I'm not running the right version of this. Let me actually. I think I'm actually going to close these down just so we can make sure we see my keystrokes. All right, so I'm going to close down my MuseScore windows and reopen them using my special demo version that can do the keystroke thing. So give me 1 second. Yeah. Demo MuseScore. All right, so this is my script that starts MuseScore in this special way that allows you to see my keystrokes. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new score here. So I'm just going to click the new score button, and I'm going to tell it that I want to use a template. So I'm going to say create from template. I'm going to pick choral template, and I'm going to use SATB closed score. That is what it means when you have only the two staves, soprano and alto combined on one, tenor and bass combined on the other. The SATB template, you can see, has the four staves. And if the whole piece was going to have everyone with different rhythms and all, I would have recommended this. But since I think I can get away with doing it, I know I can get away with doing it on only two staves, I'm going to use the closed score. So it's going to look like that. So then I've selected it, and I'll go to the next screen. The key is C, time signature is 4/4. Tempo, looks like I want 92, so I'll go ahead and say I want a tempo of 92. And I don't know the length of the piece. I don't like to count measures, so I will add or delete measures as necessary, but I do want to indicate that there is one beat of pickup. So I'll say there's a 1/4 pickup, and then I'll enter the name, all the information here, title, Garden Seasons, composer, me, lyricist, my wife, and yeah, I'm going to leave the copyright blank just because I don't. Well, I'll put in copyright, and then later we can talk about how that would actually work in terms of getting the copyright symbol in there. Copyright 2022, Marc and Kari Sabatella. All right, so I've got my score basically set up, and I'm going to be, flipping over every once in a while to look at the chat. I'll just pop it up here to look at it. And yeah, sorry, Dave, that the connection's not working for you today. So I've got the score set up. And what I want to do is, rather than go through the entire score start to finish, which is what I do in the demo within the course. And it's at towards the end of the course is where I have these kind of full-length demos. I'm sort of debating on the best placement for those, but that's how I have it for now. So if you are looking at the course and trying to find the demo, scroll all the way to the bottom is where you'll find these tutorials. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and enter quickly the notes for the first 4 bars of the soprano staff. And so if you haven't seen me enter notes before, let me repin this guy here. All right. If you haven't seen how I generally enter notes before, and there we go. Now you can see. You're going to see how I use keyboard shortcuts here. So 5 for quarter note, G. Whoa, that's loud, right? There we go. And then C, B, A, G, and then dotted quarter, 5 dot, F. And then a couple of 16ths. That's 3. G, and then 5, E, C, D, E, F. And now to enter the F sharp, the way I traditionally have always entered F sharps would have been to enter the F and then hit the up arrow to make it a sharp, and that continues to work. But now that MuseScore has actual shortcuts for the sharp key, I'm trying to get in the habit of using them. So plus will enter a sharp, and you're going to enter it before the note. So it works kind of like the other toolbar icons. You select a duration, then enter the note. Select a voice, then enter the note, right? Accidentals work the same way here on the toolbar. So I select the sharp, then enter my F, and then dotted half. So 6 dot G. So that's how I enter notes. So most of you have seen me enter notes before, but I just, I want to emphasize that that is how I'm going to be doing things here. I want to show you what I think are the most efficient ways of doing things in general. So that almost completes that measure, but you'll notice this measure is kind of left hanging here, right? It's only got 3 beats in it, and then the final beat is on the next system. Well, let me go ahead and enter that final beat. Whoops. So I make mistakes all the time, but Control Z is my friend. So I didn't mean a dotted, I didn't mean another dotted half note. So now I'm going to type 5E. So I now have the first line of music, soprano part, and now we can start talking about whatever else we want to know about. So I'm going to keep checking over into the chat and streaming delays, and yeah, if there's as far as delays between like when I say something and when you see it in the chat, that's kind of normal. There's like a 10-second delay on the chat. If you mean that there's like little hiccups and things in the stream itself, it could be your internet connection. I don't think it's my internet connection because my other system here is working fine. But in any case, you can, I don't know what to say about that. So I'm going to, again, let me get this guy back and let me make sure that is not pinned and get my score pinned again. There we go. Okay, so what I want to do here is like start picking off some individual things that we want to deal with. I think before I even deal with lyrics, I want to deal with that measure split because I think most people have already seen how to do lyrics, and I'm going to show that also. But I do want to show this measure split because I think that's something that probably a lot of people haven't seen before. There's a number of ways of doing it. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to select the first note that I want to be down on the next system there, right? So what I'm doing basically is taking this measure, right? Here's 3 beats, and there is the 4th beat. And that's very commonly done in these types of chorale types of things because we want the line of music to end where the line of lyrics ends. That's a traditional way of setting this type of music. So I'm going to select that 4th beat, the one I want kind of on the next line. And now I'm going to go to Tools and Measures, Split Measure before selected note or rest. When I do that, you'll see that now it is indeed like 2 separate little measures. And there's a little minus sign that appears on screen to kind of remind me that, yes, indeed, These are short measures. This is only 3 beats, that's only 1 beat. The minus sign won't print, but it's just there to remind me it exists. So I have a good start on what I want. Let's talk about the other things that I'm going to need to do. The other things that I'm going to need to do is, well, I want to put a break after the dotted half. So I'll select that partial measure and hit enter. And now I've got my break there. I also want to make those bar lines invisible. So, I actually wonder, is there an invisible bar line? There's not an invisible bar line, is there, on the palette? That would be sort of an interesting thing to have for the palette to have, a non-bar line bar line. But what I can do is select and press V, select and press V. And again, it's grayed out on screen, but it's really invisible. It won't show up in the PDF or in a print. The next thing that I need to do to kind of complete this process here is notice the measure number. The next system, I really don't want this guy here, that little 1 beat all by itself, to be measure 5. Measure 5 is the next full measure. So I need to exclude this little partial measure from the measure count. So I'm going to right click it, measure properties, and then say exclude from measure count. And now that is excluded, and now measure 5 is the full measure. And again, I'm going to flip back over to my chat and just see if I'm, if there's additional questions or anything that I can deal with here. Good. So that's how you do that sort of split. So that process of splitting the measure there, adding the line break, making the bar line invisible, exclude the second half from the measure count. If you do a lot of this type of music, these type of chorale arrangements, you're going to want to use that technique, probably pretty often. Splitting a measure like that wouldn't be common in most situations, but it does come up, especially like in Romantic era piano music. We have a lot of complex stuff going on. You might have a measure that's so long because of like all the stuff going on in that measure, cadenzas and whatnot, so long that it either doesn't fit on one line all by itself, or it's sort of inconvenient to put it all on one line because of what else is happening, and you just find it's going to lay out better. So the classic example I actually did in one of these score of the months like a year ago was Beethoven's Sonata Pathétique. There's one measure, it's big long measure of fast notes that is you want to get the whole introduction of that onto one page. And if you have to have that whole measure on one line, there's like no good way to do it. The good way to do it is to split that measure in half. So that kind of thing happens in like Romantic era piano music especially. All right, so let's go ahead and get some lyrics in here, since that's another, obvious thing that we're going to want to do. So I'll select that first note. Control L is the shortcut for lyric. Now notice the first lyric has a verse number on it. So I'm going to type 1 period to get that in there. And then I'll type my word, 2. Now, depending on your taste in this, you might look at this and go 1 period 2, you want a space in between the 1 period and the 2. I could go either way on that personally, but yeah, I like the space. So if I hit space right now, it moves on to the next note and lets me start entering har dash vest, right? So space won't let you enter a space in the middle of a lyric. So I'm going to use shift space now to move backwards and then get my cursor right where I want that space. Hitting space moves to the next note, but control space will insert a space at that location. On a Mac, I assume that's command space. So control space will actually insert a space in the middle of a lyric, and that is a common place to need it, is right there at the very beginning to separate the verse number from the rest of the lyric. So now if I press space, it moves on to har, and I want to enter that again and talk through this. That word is hyphenated, so I type just that first syllable, har, and then I type the hyphen, and then vest. Now that's the end of that word, so I type space, all, space, the, and now sun, And notice that sun has that big long line after it. That's because it is a melisma. Sun. It's right. It's a melisma. It's 3 notes being sung to that one syllable. And the way we're going to enter that, we saw that space moves to the next note and just puts a space there. Hyphen moves to the next note and puts a hyphen there. Underscore is going to move to the next note and add a melisma line. So if I type underscore right now, you'll see it's moved to the next note, but we don't see the melisma line yet because so far we've only covered one note. A melisma, by definition, is more than one note on a syllable. So the line doesn't actually show up until I hit underscore again to move to the next note. Now I have an actual melisma and the line appears. And then if I hit, I need to go one more because it's another note in the melisma, so I hit underscore again. And then I can type brings, comma, and then space, to, and then say, dash, ver, space, ev, dash, apostrophe re, space, bite. Is that a period or a comma? It's a comma, I think. I don't feel like zooming in. Yeah, it's a comma. There we go. So, let me hit escape and get out of there. Flip back to the chat, see if I'm missing any stuff here. Looks like just still comments about speed and so forth. So hopefully everyone's getting what they need out of this. So I now have the lyrics for that first verse in there. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the second verse since we're dealing with lyrics. I'm going to go ahead and double click that first verse and then just hit enter to move to the next line. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is if I go back and click that note and hit Control L, it's going to move down to the next verse automatically. If I need to get back up to the first line, I can hit the up arrow and it'll go the up. But then if I hit enter, it gives me a new verse. So hitting enter will give you a space for a new verse. So now I can type 2, period, and now we know control space enters the space, the space, gar, dash, den, space, sleeps, comma, space, the, space, wind, and here again it's a melisma, so I'll hit underscore to get to the next note, underscore again, blows, comma, space, its. And, okay, I want to think for a second. Did I mess up its? Every time I use the word its, I have to think, am I spelling this thing right? It apostrophe S is the contraction. It is. That is what I know. So the other one without a contraction means belonging to it. And yeah, that is correct. It's icy vapor. It's the icy vapor belonging to the wind. So it is indeed I did get that right. It's the version without the apostrophe. It's I dash C, and I'm saying dash, it's really hyphen, but hopefully you know what I mean. And then space, they, dash, pour, space, through. And now I'm done with that line. So I hit escape to kind of get me out of there and let me kind of, take a look at what I've done. So let's start talking about some other things. So we've seen notes, we've seen lyrics. After that, there's more notes, there's more lyrics. But let's talk about some of the things that we haven't necessarily actually had to grapple with. So first, again, quick check on the chat. See if there's any new comments or anything. And I do want to make sure I don't miss comments because I do know that sometimes, they get out of sync with what I'm doing. But it looks like I'm good. So I think what I want to do next is let's get some of these markings in there, and then maybe we'll get that second voice, that alto voice part in there, okay? So, because first of all, I don't have a plan. I mean, I don't mean just today. I mean ever. When I'm entering music, I don't say, first I'm going to enter the notes, then I'm going to enter the lyrics, and then I start doing it. I just go for it. And, when I get tired of entering notes, I switch to entering lyrics. When I get tired of entering lyrics, I switch to entering markings, whatever. I do things pretty haphazardly in that way. I don't have a specific plan of attack. I will say that means sometimes I miss details. So it could be, if you do this sort of thing a lot, entering music from like, because this process, transcribing, taking an existing score and just entering it in the MuseScore, frankly, I don't do it that often. If I'm using MuseScore, I'm composing, I'm arranging, I'm creating music myself, so I don't already have all those markings ready. I'm coming up with them as I need them. Actually taking completed music and entering into MuseScore, I mean, I do it some, but it's not something I do a ton. Ooh, I can see I misspelled the word vapor. So let's fix that. I'm just going to double click the PO and move the cursor to the end of it, get the R in there, and hit escape. So there you go. Fixed a typo. So if I were doing a lot of this sort of transcription from PDF, I probably would develop a more consistent plan of attack so that I know I'm getting everything and not missing something by, sort of doing it according to a checklist. And I know when I did the demo of this, I missed something and I got called on it by several of you. And I'm glad. A lot of people really noticed that I missed this breath mark here. I got one of the other breath marks in. I think I got this one, but not. I got the one on the second system, but not the first, or got the one on the first system and not the second. I don't actually remember which, but I missed one of the breath marks, and people pointed that out, which is great that people are observant, because that's how you get good at this stuff, by being observant. And I missed one. So let's get that breath mark in since I'm thinking about it. I'll click the G, and now I am currently in a workspace. That's the basic workspace that just has a certain number of palettes here, and breaths isn't one of them. So if I think I'm going to use the breaths a lot, I can click the Add Palettes button and then add breaths and pauses to my palette. And if I do that, now breaths and pauses is up here at the top, and then I can drag it down to somewhere I want. Now, I've actually set up a custom workspace where I've added a whole bunch of palettes, but I guess I'm not in that workspace right now. If I move this, I can see I'm back to the default workspace right now, because I'm constantly changing workspaces. I'm going to, though, delete this for a moment. If I just select that palette and press delete, it goes away, and it's back here under Add Palettes, ready for me to add again. The reason I did that is I want to point something out that I guess I've never fully appreciated before. But, if I don't use breaths often enough to feel like taking up space on my palette, then I can use the master palette for that. So if I go to View, Master Palette, Breaths and Pauses, there's my breath. So let me make sure I've got the note selected, and then click the breath mark, and there it is. So the master palette can be a way of accessing seldom used palettes without needing to bother actually adding them to your main palette. Now, frankly, the breath palette, if it was only about the breath marking, I probably wouldn't bother adding it. But because it's also got framatas in it, yeah, that's probably worth adding. So my custom workspace that I normally use has that workspace. In fact, I'm just going to flip over to that. So I'm going to change to what I call my working. Actually, I'll go to a demonstration one. So I'm going to switch to the demonstration workspace here, which I created earlier by saying create new workspace. And so this demonstration workspace now is one where I can go ahead and add, where did breaths go? And add that breath, and I can move it around and put it wherever I want. So here's another thing. I'm customizing my palette right now, and I'm dragging this thing, and I'm trying to decide where to put it. I don't have a I like, the basic idea that clefs, key signatures, time signatures by default are at the top, right? Because that's like the first thing that happens in music. But after that, it gets a little dicier to figure out what order to put these things in. Some people say they should be in alphabetical order, but I don't find that very useful. I don't want clefs really far away from time signatures. I feel like they belong near each other. But if you want alphabetical order, you can drag them that way. But if you're looking for a logical order that you don't have to think about too hard, you could use the master palette. Look at the master palette, see what order they're in here. Where is breaths and palette and pauses? It's right after articulations and then ornaments. Articulations, ornaments isn't there, then breaths and pauses. So it looks like I actually put this thing pretty much right where the master palette would have done anyhow. That's just, you can organize those palettes however you want, but that's something you might want to think about. So, let me again take a quick look over the chat, see if I got, wasn't verse numbering automatic? No, there was never an automatic verse numbering feature. That would be sort of a useful thing to have, but then we'd have to decide, should there be a period after it, should there be a space after it, or there would have to be options for those things. It gets a little complicated, but so yeah, the verse numbering hasn't changed in many years. But notice that it does certain things like, it's normally this lyric, because it's not a melisma, should be centered under the note. But in order to get the lyric verse numbers to align and not look weird, it's going ahead and left aligning these. So there's certain numbers of things that MuseScore is going to do to attempt to line things up when you add a verse number. If that verse number wasn't there, these lyrics would have been centered. But adding a verse number causes MuseScore to change the alignment of them. So those features have been around again for years. And yeah, if there were any sort of automatic system, we would really want to give options for all the different ways people do these things. And yeah, that would be a lovely thing to have someday. All right, so I've got my verses in there. I've got my palette set up the way I want. I got my breath pause. Because am I going to need that fermata? I think I don't need the fermata in this piece, but other pieces, of course, might need fermatas. So it's good to have that palette available. Let's talk about the multiple voices here next. The alto, notice that I have the soprano all stems up, and the alto is all stems down. So this is a thing, if you're writing music for multiple voices on a single staff, that's one way to do it, to use actual stem up, stem down, multiple voices in MuseScore. I'm going to do that, and then we're going to talk through this a little bit. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter the second voice so you can see how that happens, the alto part. I'll go N for note input mode, and then I'll click the note, the second voice on the toolbar, but there's also a shortcut, Control-Alt-2. That changes you to voice 2. And now I can enter the alto part. 5 for quarter note, D, and not that octave, so control down. And then E, D, E, C. You know what? I almost never remember to enter slurs while I'm entering notes. I always add them later. But I'm going to try it this time. I'm going to type S. And notice that starts the slur. And then I can enter my D. And then I can type S again to kind of turn the slur off. Notice the slur is highlighted here on the toolbar. Press it again to turn slur off. And now I can keep entering my notes. C, D, and now eighth notes. C, ooh, another slur. S, B, and then turn my slur off. Quarter note. C, C, D, and then dotted half. 6, dot, D. So there's my voice 2. So I just entered voice 2 and got the slurs in there. Let's go ahead and get the slur on voice 1 since I'm thinking of it. And I'm going to do it by clicking the first note, control-clicking the last note, and pressing S. If you have multiple voices, that's usually the most efficient way to do it. Click the first note, control-click the last note, press S. If there's not multiple voices, you can just do a range selection, right? If I select, say, a whole measure and press S, it gives me a slur, but it does it in both voices. So if you have multiple voices and you need the slurs in different places, you're not going to want to use the range selection. You're going to want to use that technique I just used where I clicked the first note, control-clicked the last note. Or, let me delete that, I can click the first note, press S, and it gives me a slur to the next note, and then use Shift Right to extend it another note. Shift right again, Shift right again, Shift left, etc. So those are some ways of adding slurs. You've seen now several different ways of adding slurs here. Let me check the chat again here. All right, good. So I've got the multiple voices in here, but now I want to get those of you who actually do choral music, I would love your opinion on this. Right now, some of the measures, like this measure here, the second measure, needs the multiple voices because for the first two beats, the rhythm is different. The third measure also has a place where the rhythm is different and it needs multiple voices. But most of the rhythms are the same. I know a lot of editors will choose to say, where possible, let's combine the notes onto a single stem. So, for instance, that pickup and the whole first measure could all be done within a single voice. These couple beats couldn't, but then those beats could be combined into a single voice, etc. That is absolutely an acceptable way of doing things, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But again, I want your opinion. I want, especially those of you who really do this music, what you think about this. If I select that whole range there, and now I'm going to go to Tools, Implode. Watch what happens. MuseScore has now taken all of the notes that it could combine and combined them. Right? This is combined here in the pickup, and the first measure is all combined into one voice. The second measure, the first two beats are not combined. The last two beats are. In the third measure, the first beat is not combined, but the rest is. So Implode will very quickly do that for you. Now let's talk about why I'm hesitant about this. It's really there's a number of reasons. But one of them is about this C. What the heck is going on here? Who's supposed to sing that C? At least the places where there's two different notes, then it's clear. Oh, the top is the soprano, the bottom is the alto. In the places where it splits into two voices, it's clear. The stems up are the soprano, the stems down are the alto. This one note here is kind of an odd man out, and now it looks a little funny to only have the one stem. So there's a couple solutions to this. I could go to note input mode and add another C here. I can add another C to the existing C. Does it work to actually just click it? No. But if I press Shift C to add another C and then drop it down an octave, now I have two Cs in the same voice. Is that an acceptable way to do it or not? I would have to look it up. And so this is, again, where I'm going to be looking at the chat in a moment to see what people are saying, and hopefully some people have some opinions on this. This is one way to do it. Another way to do it would be I'm going to undo all that implode business, and this time I'm going to recognize that that note is kind of an issue, and I'm just going to implode everything up until that point, but not including that C. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I have it selected correctly. So this time if I do Tools Implode, I'm keeping the C double stemmed like that. And then I can do the rest of it also. So I can implode in little sections, or I could have gone back and added a voice too. So I don't know. For my money, personally, I don't like this. I don't like this flipping back and forth. For piano music, absolutely. For piano music, I would absolutely go back and forth between one voice and two voices without even giving it a second thought. Because I only got one hand. Well, I got two hands, but one hand per staff anyhow. So multiple voices are sort of an abstraction. But if I'm dealing with choral music, these are people. The altos are different people than the sopranos, and I kind of prefer it to be more obvious who is singing which part. So I kind of prefer this opposite stem direction, but I gather that's not as common. So again, I want to check what's going on in comments here. So great. So Dean, yeah, you're saying that they're often combined, which is absolutely true. They are often combined. But what do you feel? What do you feel about that middle C is what I'm wondering about there. Dennis saying that you prefer to keep them separated. I generally do. Chris generally prefers separated. Rod points out that if the voices cross, this is kind of awkward too. Yeah, so when voices cross, there's another case, meaning if the alto gets higher than the soprano, or the bass gets higher than the tenor, or in barbershop, the bass goes above the baritone or whatever. So yeah, voice crossing is another situation. I would rather keep it simple and keep them separated personally. So Marla says stems down also. So it's interesting that the people talking from a perspective of actually singing in the choir are almost unanimous here in saying they prefer it stems separated. But for people writing, we're like, well, maybe we want to write it this way because we think it's simpler. And that's what I wonder. I wonder if arrangers think that the combining is better, but the singers actually say otherwise. That's one thing that I wonder. Michael's talking about, yeah, you're right. This looks weird, right? This looks weird to have the C double stemmed and the D, E not. So you have to think if you're going to use this approach. Now, here's another approach. Do it on a measure by measure basis instead of a beat by beat basis, right? Like this here, I find a little awkward. I find it a little awkward that the first beat has separate stems and the other beats have them combined. It's not wrong. There are definitely editors that do that. In vocal music and in piano music, I would do it without a second thought. But again, if I'm trying to follow this as an alto, I see the C and the B, and then suddenly the stems downs disappear mid-measure. I kind of almost feel like if you're going to use that approach of combining things, you either do it a whole measure at a time, or you don't, you do it you either do it for the measure or you don't do it for the measure. That's maybe what I might think. So let me try to do this. I'm actually going to undo these changes again, get back to the two voices, and I'm going to say, I'll go ahead and implode these. Tools, implode. I'm not going to implode this measure, not going to implode that measure, but I will implode this measure. So, I don't know. Here, now, a measure is either completely combined or completely separated. Is that better? I don't know. There's a certain logic to that I would like to think is a thing, should be a thing, would be appreciated if you did that. I don't know. So the downside of separate stems is, notice how far the lyric line is here from the notes, and it's all because of these two notes sticking stem down over here. If it weren't for that, if we had been able to combine everything onto single stems, these lyrics that could have been closer up on the staff. But on the other hand, that's the one place where the rhythm actually differs. So we really don't have a ton of choice in the matter there. But there might be other places where doing it all in one voice allows you to save some space. That could be a reason. But if it doesn't allow you to save the space, that kind of eliminates that as a consideration. Now I see Monica talking about three notes. And yeah, I mean SSATB, right? Two sopranos, alto, tenor, bass, or SAATB. There's all sorts of different configurations like that you'll occasionally see. I personally would think really hard about whether I want to put three voices on one staff, because it feels like you're asking for trouble. I guess it's done, and if the music is sufficiently simple and there's not a lot of places where the rhythms differ, so you can literally just use three-note chords, like, say, background harmonies in pop music. Like, remember I did that whole session, if people were following the music master class, on the Beatles harmonies, and we talked about like three-part harmonies that they were doing, and they were all having the same rhythm for a lot of those things. So yeah, if you're doing three-part background harmonies, that kind of thing, or not even background, but he's a real nowhere man, that was all three people singing the same rhythm, you can afford to put them on one staff and get away with it. But I feel like most of the music that people might arrange for, like, that many voices, you're going to have places where the rhythms split. So So, Marla, you're saying you still prefer them down. So, yeah, I mean, I do too. But I did want to open up the discussion because I do know, like, if I look in Gould, Elaine Gould's Behind Bars, she talks about this, and she's totally okay with combining the parts like this. She doesn't get into detail about when it's okay to split and when it's not, and what the considerations are. I know that when I worked on a project. That involved this, an editing project, we had rules that said if you were going to split, if you're going to do this, you had to do it a half a measure at a time. Like in 4/4, you could do 2 beats, or the first 2 beats and the last 2 beats had to be treated consistently. You weren't allowed to change you weren't allowed to introduce a second voice like in the middle of a measure, other than actually literally in the middle, like right there at that dividing line between beat 2 and beat 3. So the question is, can you create separate parts? Oh, that's a great question, Bob. So I'm going to undo this and get back to where I was. Okay, so I'm back to having, if I undo one more, is that going to get rid of my breath mark? What did it get rid of? Oh, it got rid of, it fixed my, there's my slur. Okay. So let's talk about getting separate parts for this. This is a great question, Bob. This is possible. It's weird and tricky to figure out how to do it, but it is supported. So let's do this. Let's create separate soprano and alto parts. Now, first of all, I will note, and I'm sure any of the singers here will corroborate this, it's pretty common that you would read a piece like this directly from the score so that you can see what everyone else is doing. It's more in instrumental music that we expect everyone to have their own part. But that becomes less true the longer pieces are and the more complex they are rhythmically. For instance, like Renaissance motets, everyone's going to have their own part. That's pretty common. Not necessarily always, but that's how that was published. Renaissance music was published in what's called part book format, where everyone had their own part. So that's because there's a lot of counterpoint, a lot of different rhythms happening at the same time. So let's go ahead and get the parts here. I'm going to go to the parts dialog, and there's a couple of default parts here, women and men, but I'm going to skip those and generate new parts. I'm going to generate a new part here, and I'm going to call it, rename it to soprano. And now another new part, and rename it and call it alto. All right, so I've created these two parts, and I will select them. Let's see, can I select them both? I thought I was supposed to be able to select two parts at once, but apparently that's not possible. All right, I will open the soprano part. I'll just say open all. That's easy. So let's visit the soprano part. Well, here's the soprano part, but it has nothing in it. Well, we need to get something into it. When you create part, like the women part here is populated automatically. The default parts are populated automatically. Any of these custom parts that we create, we're going to need to populate ourselves. So I've created the soprano part. I'm now going to go to the instruments panel, and notice everything's kind of hidden here. What I want to do is select that staff here, and I want to tell it that I want to show that staff by clicking that eye icon to open it. Now I'm going to click the arrow icon here to open that up further. And now I got to think about how to do this. It's going to be the gear icon where it says treble clef. Here's where I get to choose which voices. So I want voice 1, but not 2, 3, or 4. And boom, there we go. So my soprano part now has just voice 1. Let's do the same for alto so you can see it again. I go to alto, I show that instrument, click the arrow button to show the staves here, and then click the gear icon on that staff and say I want 2, but I don't want 1 or 3 or 4. Of course, there's not going to be a voice 3 or 4, so it's probably harmless to leave those checked. Now notice when I did this, it does hopefully intelligent things with things like stem direction. Like notice that these stems here are stemmed down on the C and the B, even though in the score itself they're stem up. So that much was intelligent. But did you notice what wasn't as intelligent? There's no lyrics here because the lyrics are in voice 1. So you might have to play some games to get that to work in vocal music. Because again, this feature wasn't really thought through for vocal music. It's intended more for instrumental music, where you might put 2 flutes on a single, like in the score for an orchestra. First and second flute would commonly be on one staff, but then you generate separate parts. And you don't have lyrics to worry about. So, that the fact that the lyrics don't come through because they're only in one voice isn't an issue in instrumental music, but it is here. So I would have to fake it. And let's try this. If I enter some lyrics here to harvest, I now have lyrics in my second voice. But if I go back to my score, you can see that they're overlapping each other, right? So what I want to do is maybe I want to select that voice 2 lyric. I'm going to right click it, say select, more, same voice. You would do this after entering everything. So now all the voice 2 lyrics are selected, and then V to make them invisible. So that would be the kind of workaround here. You'd have to add the lyrics to the alto part separately and then make them invisible in the score so they don't. Now, the reason this looks weird here is my voice 1 lyric has the number 1 on it, my voice 2 doesn't, and it really should. So if I actually put the 1 period and space there, they should actually overlap each other perfectly, and so it doesn't even look weird in the score. But yeah, there'll be other places where it does. So I'm glad I did that. So anyhow, I'm glad you asked that question because it is an interesting question. So Monica, that essentially answers your question. There is, if you have multiple voices, you're going to need to add the lyrics, and you want it. So first of all, when you have multiple voices, normally you don't need to add the lyrics to both voices because they're singing the same rhythm. So one set of lyrics suffices. But if you want to generate those separate parts there, you're going to need that trick that I just showed you. Enter the lyrics and actually, could I do that by, I could copy and paste them. Let's try that. That sounds fun. I'm gonna delete this. I've never tried this before. I'm gonna delete these lyrics here, and I'm gonna see if I can copy and paste from the score. So I'm gonna right click this lyric and say select similar, copy, and now I'm going to come to the alto here. Oh, crap. All right, well, it crashes. That's the answer. So I was actually afraid it was just going to do something else weird, but crashing is also weird and bad. No idea what just triggered that crash, because obviously it's not just the act of clicking the alto part, but that's the last thing I did. How about if I say, yes, I want to restore the session? Seriously? I said, yes, I wanted to restore the session, and I didn't get any work back at all. Bummer. All right, so I'm constantly telling people, getting on people's case, make sure you save your work. I never saved my score, right? Never saved my score. So unfortunately, I'm still not sure why the autosave didn't give me anything more than this, but I do want to show you something about autosave files because normally they should exist. And if I come here into the folder where I was working, it's because I never saved it at all, I guess. If I had saved it ever, I would have an autosave file here, and that would get recovered. So there's your lesson. Save, and I normally do this when I'm not doing demonstrations. As soon as I create the score, I go ahead and save it. So I save that, and then that enables the autosave to work more reliably. So unfortunately, I didn't do that, and now I am paying the price, and I just lost that work. But well, that's life. What are you going to do? In any case, I was about done with today anyhow, but I'm going to get my MuseScore Café theme up. But I do want to talk a little bit more about the multiple voices and lyrics, just because, we've been focusing on that first line where it's more chorale style. I do want to just show this idea here where I've got lyrics above and below the staff. I want to show you how to do that. I want to make sure I get that in before we go. So let me get back to that score here, and let's just pick a random measure to start entering some of this stuff into. Hello. There we go. I'm going to enter this measure right here into the bass. I don't know where it is, but I'm just going to enter the notes. So the tenor part, 5 is G, B, and then 4 for eighth notes, A, B, and then quarter note, C, and then I will control left to get back to the beginning of the measure there, control alt 2 to switch to voice 2, 6, 0 to enter that half rest, and now eighth notes. A, G, F, E. All right, so there's the notes for that measure. Let's get the lyrics in here. So I'm going to put in the tenor voice lyrics first. I'm going to click that G, hit Control L, and say spring, comma, and then melisma. So hit the melisma line until I'm down to where I need it to be. And notice it's not displaying the melisma line because the notes are a little too close together. As things spread out, it will show the melisma, but it only shows it if there's room for it. So let's add some more words here. Gar, dash, and then another dash because that garden is also melisma. Den. If I go ahead and put in a line break here, it's going to spread things out for me, and then I'll see that. So I have those lyrics entered. What I can do now is select them. I'll click one, shift click the last one, and that selects all those lyrics, and press X, and that flips them above the staff. And now I can enter the bottom voice. Now if I click this A, to be honest, I'm not sure which voice I'm going to get. I got, looks like that's green, so it is voice 2. But I don't like to rely on that. If I want to make sure I'm selecting voice 2 on when the notes are overlapping like this, I'll do a little trick like selecting the next note and then hitting the left arrow. And now I can know that I've got that voice 2 selected. Hit Control L, sum, dash, mer, comma. Oh, sum, nope, not sum. It's sum, dash, and then another dash, because sum is also a melisma. Summer. So, mer, comma, space, and then space again. So that's how you would enter that sort of thing. I often do it that way. I'll enter the top voices lyrics first, select them, flip them up to the top, then I can enter the bottom voices lyrics. So anytime you're trying to have multiple lyrics for multiple voices, and that gets back to what I think Monica was asking. I don't know if that's literally what you wanted to know about or if you were thinking more about that part generation, but it's relating to that comment. So cut and paste. Yeah, there you go. I tried to cut and paste and we saw what happened. But pasting hyphenated text as lyrics. So that should work if you mean you're copying the lyrics themselves. If you mean you're copying text like from a word processor, there is a new feature coming soon, a plugin that's going to be provided with MuseScore 4.0.2, which should be coming out very soon. And that plugin it's basically a lyric editor that allows you to type in lyrics into a window, hit a button, and it gets copied into the notes. So that's going to be pretty cool coming, hopefully within days, if most weeks. Michael, you're asking about, I did see your question about that. And what I believe to be the case is if I make this window smaller and then close it when it's the only open MuseScore window, then it's going to remember that. But if you have multiple windows open, it's going to remember whichever one it feels like remembering. So in theory, close all your MuseScore windows and then open one and only one window, size it the way you want, close it. That should then be remembered. Now, whether Mac supports that or not, I can't say. But let's try this. I'm going to close MuseScore Café here. I've got my one and only, did I just lose another thing there? Nope. Here's my one and only window here. Let's close it. Don't save. And let's try to open that thing again. Because I'm using that demo script version, it might do something weird. But let's see. I'm going to open this window, and the question is, will I get it full screen or not? And again, it might be different on Mac because, yeah, so at least on Linux, it will remember the last used window size, but make sure that you have that as your one and only window when you close it. So there you go. But yeah, that copy paste approach should have worked, and I'm going to have to try it again, see if I can get it to crash again, and if so, figure out the steps exactly and report a bug on it. But in general, that approach I was trying to do, copying the voice one lyrics from the score and then pasting them into the part, yeah, actually I should have done it still in the score. If I was thinking, I wouldn't have tried doing it in the part, because that's probably complicated with that whole way the multiple part voices things works. I probably should have just copied directly from the soprano note to the alto note within the score. That might have had a better chance of working. I don't know. Anyhow, so we covered a lot of ground here, covered a lot of things here, and hopefully you found something useful here. And I think I covered most of the questions, so let's play ourselves out. I want to thank everyone for being here for the MuseScore Café. Thanks for the lively conversation, the questions, and you got to see while we tried some things that I've frankly never tried before, and it was kind of fun, and got to see a crash, and I get to sort out what that was about. So tomorrow, Music Masterclass, I will be we'll be just looking at some music. There's been some things that people have posted. We'll still be looking at the thirds and sevenths project that I've been asking people to kind of work on, because I've had a few people working on that, so I'll probably talk about that a little bit more. I want to encourage people to be posting music as they compose it, whether it's specifically related to anything here or not that that I'm talking about. But I'm also going to be giving more and more projects, and we're going to be doing things. Oh, let me put this out there as a thought thing. I want to start doing kind of cohorts of my courses, my basic theory course, my harmony course, and my counterpoint course. And I want to do each of those as a cohort coming up this year or later. So maybe starting this summer. And so I'm wondering which courses people are most interested in, like going through together. The basic theory course, where it's really just basics, how to spell scales and chords, or the harmony course where you learn all about chord progressions, or the counterpoint course where we get into things like writing fugues. Which of these seems most interesting to you to actually want to go through as a cohort? You can try to put that in the chat here, but I'm about to sign off, so I probably won't see it, but I'll post in the community, and then y'all can comment, all right? So something to be thinking about, and I'll post links to the courses so you can check out their summaries. All right, hope everyone enjoyed the session, and I will be seeing you hopefully tomorrow and next week and whenever I see you.